Hello, my name is James Rowland. I live in the rural southwest of England, and for the past 25 years I have been working on horse-drawn vehicles. I started my career as a wooden boat builder, but never really had much affinity with sailing or the water, despite living so close to the coast. But I did really enjoy working with the curved timber and all the complications that are involved with working with bent, twisted, wonky pieces of wood to make something that floats. I also, living in a rural area, grew up with horses from a very young age. So being able to combine love of horses and also curved, complicated timber, it was kind of inevitable that I would end up working on vehicles like this. Now, I don't normally record or video any of the work I do, apart from the odd photograph, but I thought I would start a video diary for this next build that's coming in the workshop, which is a full restoration of a gypsy wagon, a bow-top gypsy wagon. And I thought it would be interesting to make a little diary for my own record and for anybody else that's interested on what is involved in building a horse-drawn vehicle, including making the wheels from scratch. This is the first vehicle that got me hooked on horse-drawn vehicles. I was in the boatyard, as I mentioned earlier, and I'd gone to our local tip or recycling centre, and this was about to be crushed, or the original was about to be crushed. And I took pity on it and crossed the palm of a lorry driver with silver, and he picked this up and brought it back to the workshop for me. And it then became my little personal project, of which everything else has grown from there. It's a very plain wagon, a very small wagon for English wagons as well. This is a late Dorset pattern. It's very square, boxy, and utilitarian. It's quite heavily built, big chunky wheels that could carry a lot of weight, but it's also very narrow because of the very, very narrow roads we have here and steep ground and lots of undulating valleys, rivers, things like that. So these small, light wagons were perfect for it. The Cornish wagons are ever so slightly smaller again, but this is a pretty small wagon, but a very solid wagon. And I say it's quite late period, so this would be probably early 1900s. It's quite flat. It doesn't have much of a shear to it. There are some nice curved features underneath on the undercarriage, but you don't really see them very much. It's your utilitarian farm vehicle. Every single piece of wood on this is new, and 99% of the ironwork is original. All of the decorative ironwork and functional ironwork came off the original. The wheels are brand new. Had to have new tyres. The original tyres were completely shot. But everything that matters is original apart from the wood. I did try and salvage at least one piece of original wood from the original wagon. Unfortunately, everything was so rotten or wormy that it wasn't salvageable. And my intentions with building this were that it could go behind a horse again. There's always a fine line between conservation and restoration, and whether you should keep something completely original or whether it's okay to keep it functional. And the two aren't always mutually beneficial to each other. So I decided I wanted this to go behind a horse again. And I'm sure the men that made this originally would have said the same thing. I think they'd be horrified that something like this that they'd made would end up in a roundabout full up with flowers for people to drive around and not being used. So I like to think it's what they would have wanted, that it's functional. They would have, in their careers, they would have been repairing and keeping going things made by generations previous to them. So yeah, in my mind, the conservation restoration argument, I'm in favour of restoration. I think things should be used or be able to be used for their original purpose. I will put some photographs of this wagon as it was when it came to me, and you'll be able to see the state of it. I'll insert them here now. This is a recent acquisition, this wagon. This came to me from a local farmer. It originally came from Pitminster, which is near Taunton in Somerset. This is quite a simple design as well. Doesn't have any of the fancy standards down the side as this wagon does, but it's a nicer shape. It has some nice curves to it, but one day this will have some care and attention, and this one will go behind a horse. Also, as far as this one goes, I still have the rear hay ladder or lade. That is made. I've still got to paint that and finish that, but that's a job for another time, as is this a job for another time. Time to get cracking on the gypsy wagon. So, these are the wheels for the gypsy wagon that will be shortly arriving. I have had these wheels for a couple of weeks now, so I can start doing some work on them, measuring up, starting to prepare some components for when the rest of the wagon comes, which will be next weekend, but on this video it'll probably be momentarily. Anyway, I will post up some pictures of the wagon as it was in the orchard, and you'll be able to see the state of it. The wheels, as you can see, are completely knackered. The fabric top on the bows is also rotten. It's not in a good shape, not salvageable. Various other bits of it will need replacing. So anyway, you'll be able to see that on the photographs right now. First job for me is to start making the stocks, or naves, as we call them in this country, hubs, I guess would be the lay term. So I need to know how deep they are, and also need to know the diameter. Now these are all pretty rotten, so I don't think I'll be able to be absolutely exact because there's lots missing, but I should be able to have a pretty good idea. So diameter here, 9 7/8. I am of an age where I grew up with the metric system, but boat building, all the traditional boats we made and worked on were all built to imperial dimensions, and I've got to say, being fluent in both, definitely prefer the metric system. However, these are going to be imperial, so that's what I have to work with. So these in a different position, that is 9 and that's about 9 7/8 as well. And height-wise, height here, 10 3/4 inches. no, sorry, 11 3/4 inches. That's also 11 3/4 inches. What else can I measure? Do you know, these are all in such a bad state, I don't think I'm going to get any decent measurements of anything else. One thing I can do is measure the height. That's a more sensible way of doing it. Now, these are particularly thick wheels for the wagon. When you see it later on, and from the photographs, for the size of the vehicle, these are especially wide and quite small. I would have expected these to have been just over 2, maybe 2.5 inches wide, because even the rear wheels, that's not 4 foot in diameter. So yeah, they're particularly wide. I think this particular wagon was built on a dray that was repurposed, and whatever the vehicle did in its original life was carrying quite a heavy load, so very, very substantial wheels. But anyway. If I measure across the opposites, so that is only a shade, maybe a 1/16 of an inch under 10 inches, 9 15/16. I am going to make my hubs, my naves, at 10 inches in diameter, or shoot for that anyway. I imagine these were probably 10 inches or as close to them as the wheelwright who made them could get, and over time they've rotted away to very little, so I think 10 inches is a reasonable diameter to go for. And also that is almost 12 inches across. I'm going to go for 12 inches by 10 inches in diameter for my blanks, I think. I think that'll do. So my next job is to turn the naves, turn the blanks. Once I have the outside diameter, I will then fit the stock bands, or stock bonds, which are the metal rings on either side. These wheels only have 2. Sometimes just in front of and just behind the spokes, you'll have another band. You may have noticed them on the other wagons I showed, but these just have the 2. They're probably slightly tapered, and they would have been shrunk on hot, but we'll do that. The other thing I need to do is identify which wheel came from which side of the wagon, which I think I can do from looking at these wheels and the photographs of the wagon in situ, because the boxes, which are the iron sleeves inside the wheels, can be seen quite clearly on this one. They are likely to have worn, well, they will absolutely have worn to that particular axle where they were. So it's important that this goes back on the right axle. And it'd be nice to keep the ironwork of the the stock bonds for each wheel, but they will all be slightly different. They're all handmade after all. I will try and keep these tyres. We'll see how it goes. I know that this one in particular is completely shot. It's almost nothing here. I put the calipers on this previously. This is down to about 6mm or 1/4 of an inch, whereas all these other tyres, they're still largely 1/2 inch or just a little bit below. So they are considerably thicker. This one has really worn away. So I think this has been sat somewhere wet and it has just rusted away, unfortunately. But we'll use what we can and take it from there. An interesting thing with this wheel is actually being able to see it as it is. Normally there's a big lump of wood here and you can't see inside, but it's really interesting seeing close up how these spokes are all tenon-did and how they fit, and how every other spoke is square on the end and was driven in squarely, but because they hit, it is they've all been chamfered, where every other spoke has been chamfered. So here we have this spoke here has a chamfer, this spoke here has a chamfer, this is square, so these were driven in first, all of the opposite spokes, they were driven into the stock, and then these ones were ever so slightly beveled just to give some clearance so they didn't hit the other spokes, so that they would actually drive home, which is interesting to see, because that would always be hidden. You'd never get to see what's in there. Also see the nails that fasten this on. Blacksmith forged by hand, nice handmade nails. Other features of note, fellies, or fellows, depending on which part of the world you're from. These will be made of ash, so there's one felly section for every 2 spokes. Ah, there's the join there. So 2 spokes to 1 felly. This felly would have gone here, covered those 2 spokes. There to there is another felly section. So yeah, we will start disassembly. This seems like a good opportunity to now give you a little bit of a walk around this wagon, and I can point out a few things that might be of interest. So here we are, first things first. It is approximately 10 feet long, just a little bit under. The forecarriage is at 90 degrees at the moment and is not fixed. That broke when the farmer who owns this brought it over. It was picked up on a forklift and some of the rotten wood broke away. So that's just shoved under there. It's actually supported on this trestle at the moment, and that's just to keep it out of the way. The windows are very unoriginal. They've been made out of fused glass, and I don't think they're going to go back in again. They might be used elsewhere inside the wagon for decorative purposes, but I think the owners would like the outside to be a little bit more traditional. But it's very plain, despite the chamfering in a few places. These were traditionally quite heavily carved. It's not been especially well converted as well. So you can see under here, this is the original dray that this wagon was built on. Sometimes these wagons were made from the ground up to be a living wagon, and sometimes they were repurposed from other vehicles, and this one has been quite clearly repurposed from another vehicle. There's an iron bracket now there that's completely redundant on this wagon, but probably had some use maybe for a carriage lamp or something when it was a working dray. Inside, there's nothing terribly interesting inside because it's been quite recently done. I say recently, but I don't think it's historic. It's not antique. There's no carving, there's no embellishments in this. There's a little cupboard there. There used to be a stove here. And there's a flue in the roof that the owners took that out just before I took delivery of this. And that is going to go back in again. So there's the inside. Do a little walk around. The fabric is rotten. And you can see the bottom part of the original dray. I think the bolster here, this piece of wood, needs to be replaced. But once the top's off, we'll be able to see and diagnose any problems there may be with it. Now, I noticed on some of these carvings where a bit of filler had come out, inside there is a Phillips screw. So this isn't especially old, and especially the fabric around here has just been screwed on. There's quite a lot of detail on this that just isn't right. And we're going to put it right, make it a little bit more traditional, is what the owners would like, rather than something that looks like a bit of a DIY bodge, something that looks like it would have done had it been commissioned by a gypsy back in the day. So these are the wheels. Again, no carvings on the side, not even any decorative paintwork, so it's all quite plain. There you go. So this is the vehicle. Most of the undercarriage will go again. So most of the body of this dray is actually very sound. There's a few broken pieces of wood on this four-carriage assembly, this piece in particular. That will need replacing. Possibly this piece where there's a split in it. But most of what's underneath is in pretty good condition. I think everything you can see that's red will probably end up needing to be replaced, given the dry rot. It'll be more effort, I think, to repair this than it would to actually be to replace it. Certainly needs a new door frame, needs new doors, needs new fabric, needs new bows. The bows are just pieces of batten in there that have kinked where there's been a knot. Wasn't very nice wood that was chosen when it was made. But it's a good starting point. This video is already in the region of 20 minutes long, so I'm going to end it here, and you basically know what I'm up to now. So the next video is going to be turning the stocks for the wheels, then the spokes, then the fellies, and then once the wheels are made, I can then take it off these steel wheels, these car wheels, and put in the original wheels back on, lift it up. Once it's on its feet, I can then more easily move this around, take it outside, and then start working on the top sides. There's a little bit of work to do on the four-carriage before I do that, but once the wheels are made and the four-carriage is pulled out and repaired, there's a couple of broken hounds on it here, then I can do that, but they're for future videos. So if you've got this far, thank you very much for watching. I hope you'll join me next time. Press the like and subscribe button and do all those YouTube things. That's great to know that people are out there and may be interested in this. and I'll see you next time.